So today we're going to talk about measuring unemployment. So we're going to explain how unemployment and employment rate are measured by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we're going to talk about problems with the data. So the Bureau of Labor Statistics is part of the Department of Labor, and they conduct a survey of 60,000 households each month to determine who's employed and who's not. So some of you are already thinking of the fundamental problem here. Say the Bureau of Labor Statistics calls you up and they're asking you questions about if you have a job or not. Um, Inherently, some people are going to lie. Their pride takes over. They're going to say they have a job when they don't, um, or they say they don't if they do. So, this is definitely going to skew some of the data. So, the Bureau of Labor Statistics divides the total population into three groups. The first group is the under 16 and or institutionalized. This is a group of young people and people who are in correctional facilities or mental institutions. These people are not considered as potential members of the labor force. Then we've got the not in the labor force. This is adults, those 16 years of age and older, who are potential workers, but they're not employed and they're not looking for a job. Um, these are full time stay at home parents, full time students, retirees. Um, don't have a job, don't want a job, not looking for a job. Then we've got the labor force. The labor force is all people 16 years of age and older who are not institutionalized, who are willing and able to work. And then the labor force is going to get divided into two, those that have jobs and those that do not. Here's numbers for people in the civilian labor force. You can see it goes up year by year. Um, this shows the civilian labor force participation rate as a percentage. So you can see it went up drastically here in the 80s. It's starting to go down. Anybody know why? It's those baby boomers, as they retire, we're starting to see the labor force participation rate go down. Um, and here you can see it just the straight numbers. This shows the labor force participation rate for men and women. You can see, since 1950, many more women have been entering the labor force as it becomes more socially acceptable. Men have been leaving it. Um, so the Bureau of Labor Statistics defines employment as the state of having a job for which one receives money or other compensation. So you are employed if you're over 16 and you've worked at least 1 hour for pay within the last week, or you've worked 15 or more hours within a family business. And if you don't get paid, if you work for a family business, you're considered employed. uh, or else you've held a job but you didn't work because of weather or vacation or illness or other things. So when we look at our economy, and we've talked about this before, agriculture sector, our primary sector, is very small. Then we've got our manufacturing sector, and then most of our economy is the service sector, our tertiary sector. Service occupations like teaching, uh, doctors, medicine, research, all those things. They're not directly involved with production of goods, uh, but it makes up quite a bit of our economy. Our unemployment rate is the percentage of people in the labor force who are working. So it's number employed divided by the total labor force times 100. So in 2009, our employment rate was 91%. This shows unemployment rate by month in some of the past years. We can't actually determine the most recent from this rate, but currently, as of February 2020, the unemployment rate in the United States was 3.5%, meaning our employment rate was 96.5%. People are counted as unemployed if they're 16 years or older, not institutionalized, not currently working, but they have to actively be seeking a job. People who do not have jobs and are not looking for them are not considered part of the labor force. And as soon as you quit looking for a job, you're considered not in the labor force. So unemployment rate, just like employment rate, is number unemployed divided by total labor force times 100. And like I said, here in 2009, you could see it was at 9.3% coming out of the Great Recession. As of February, our unemployment rate in the United States is 3.5%. That is going to go up in the coming months. Here you can see just historically, you can see the unemployment rate in the Great Depression. And then if this graph had continued on, in the Great Recession, we would have hit just over 10%. We have a couple types of unemployment that we'll talk about in the next video, but today we want to talk a little bit about seasonal. Seasonal unemployment is seasonal fluctuations in business activities. So this is like my cousin who owns a landscaping business. He works mainly March through October of every year. In November through February, he's really considered unemployed. He doesn't have a job, and he's not actually looking for a job during that time. He's considered seasonally unemployed, though. He knows his job is going to come back come March. This is businesses that hire people pre-holidays. In Minnesota, this would be your lifeguards that are not working in the winters. Ski instructors not working in the summers. Seasonally adjusted unemployment rates are increased or decreased to take this seasonal employment shifts into account. Regional, state, and city unemployment rates are calculated just to give smaller government sectors a better picture of what's going on locally to help determine state and local policies. So here you can see unemployment rate by state that's seasonally adjusted. Overall, the U.S. rate was 5%. You can see in Minnesota, we were between 4 and 4.9%. You can see historically, we have been lower than the national average. And you can click that link and it'll bring you to the data. This shows unemployment in the Twin Cities area, and you can see that gets even lower than the statewide average because that's where the jobs tend to be. Here you can see unemployment rates by country. Go ahead and click that link if you want some more information. So despite the scientific sampling and the interview technique, there is criticism when it comes to this data. First off, the Bureau of Labor Statistics lists all part-time workers as fully employed. So that means somebody even working an hour a week, whether they want more hours or not, is considered fully employed. And people criticize that because if people are working, they've got a job and they've got some hours, but they want more hours, they're not as well off as they want to be. And that should be reflected in the data, according to some economists. So this understates our unemployment rate. It makes it look better than it really is. This shows the data of part-time workers for economic reasons, meaning they were forced to take fewer hours and work part-time and not full-time because of what was happening in the economy. And you can definitely see these numbers go way up in the midst of the Great Recession. And then after that, they start to go back down. We are going to see these numbers go back up in the following months. Discouraged workers. So this is the idea of people who are willing and able to work. They want a job and they've been looking, but they get discouraged and they stop looking. As soon as they stop looking, they're no longer considered part of the labor force. They go into that category of not in the labor force. So this makes our unemployment rate look better than it is. It understates what's going on with unemployment. So you can see discouraged workers goes way up once again in the Great Recession and goes down since then. Underemployment, this is people that work in jobs which they are overqualified. This tends to be a lot of new college graduates. They take jobs, any job they can get, even if it doesn't fit in with what their degree is. because they need a job, they need to make money, they need to start paying back those student loans. And then lastly, incorrect information. People lie and they say they don't have a job because they don't want to pay taxes. Pride takes over and they say that they have a job, or they say that they're looking when they're not. All of those can skew our data. Here's kind of the example of underemployment. He's looking for a dishwasher and the guy's got multiple doctorates. So our unemployment rate is the U3, which in this case was 5.5%. The U6 would be total unemployment, bringing all those people into account. You can see it's higher. So our actual unemployment rate is understated because it lists those part-time workers and the underemployed and all that. So there are a couple other measures that people argue we should use. The U1, this includes people unemployed for 15 weeks or longer. This number is basically our long-term unemployment. This gives us a good idea of what's going on in the underlying economy. If people are out of work for long periods of time, it is a problem. And you can see, once again, all these recessions, you see this number spike. The U2, this measure job losers and people who have completed temporary jobs. This does not include the people that choose to leave their jobs. U3, that's our official unemployment rate. Right now, 3.5%. The U4 includes U3 plus discouraged workers. People argue that we should use this a little bit higher. It's going to be a little bit higher number because it's going to include the discouraged workers, but people say that's more of an accurate reflection of what's going on in the economy. U5 includes total unemployed plus what we call marginally attached. These are people who are they're not working, they're not looking for a job, but if the right job came along, they would take it. So this is going to be a little bit higher because it's going to add those people in as well. The U6, this is going to be our biggest number because it's going to be all the people that are classified as unemployed, all the marginally attached workers, all the employed for part-time for economic reasons. So all those people that are kind of underemployed and all these people that would work more if they could. And that's going to be our highest number. We can talk about unemployment and how it affects different groups in different ways. Definitely by occupation. The lower skilled occupations tend to get hit higher by unemployment than high skill occupations. Age, teenagers have a much higher rate of unemployment than adults. Adults are much lower. They tend to be more reliable. They don't lose their jobs as often. Race and ethnicity. Racism is alive and well within hiring practices. Unemployment rate for African Americans and Hispanics is much higher than that of whites. And here you can see it graphically. Even with fair employment practice and equal opportunity legislation, it still happens. Gender, unemployment rate tends to be higher for men as they tend to have more of the factory jobs and they get hit harder by unemployment. Education, we've talked about this one before. The more education you have, typically the more insulated you are from unemployment. There are a couple of videos